Taliban Divisions. This editorial examines emerging splits within the Afghan Taliban. There are concerning reports of possible divisions within the Afghan Taliban, particularly between the ideological old guard based in Kandahar and the more pragmatic members of the hardline movement. Concerning reports implies that news of internal splits is alarming. Ideological old guard refers to traditionalists rooted in established beliefs, primarily from Kandahar, while more pragmatic members denotes those favoring practical approaches within the same hardline framework. Afghanistan's internal power struggles matter to both Pakistan and Kabul's other neighbors, as well as the larger international community, because if the current dispensation implodes, it may fuel a fresh humanitarian exodus, along with empowering transnational terrorist groups based in that country. Internal power struggles means conflicts over control within the Taliban. Implodes is a metaphor for collapsing from within. This collapse could cause a new wave of refugees, humanitarian exodus, and enable terrorist groups to thrive. The rumors have been given credence as some senior members of the Taliban apparently fled Afghanistan after making remarks critical of the leadership. Given credence means the rumors are being taken seriously. The fact that high-ranking members reportedly fled after criticizing the leadership suggests that dissent is already emerging. This includes Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Staniksai, who reportedly left in January after criticizing Taliban Supreme Leader Mullah Hibatullah Akhundzada, specifically the latter's harsh stance on girls' education. This sentence names a key figure. Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Staniksai, whose departure after criticizing the leader over issues like girls' education lends weight to the allegations of internal dissent. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid has denied that Mr. Staniksai fled, saying he was in the UAE to visit family. Denied shows an official attempt to downplay the incident. By claiming he was simply visiting family, the spokesman seeks to minimize the significance of the reported defection. Moreover, Mr. Mujahid has downplayed talk that an internal rebellion was brewing within Taliban ranks, stating that while opinions varied, the Islamic Emirate remains a united front. Downplayed means he intentionally minimized the reports of a rebellion. Remains a united front is an assertion meant to project solidarity, even if underlying divisions exist. Despite these claims, the world, including Afghanistan's neighbors, should monitor the situation closely. This line advises vigilance, suggesting that the external community must keep an eye on the unfolding internal dynamics. After all, following the collapse of the Najibullah government in 1992, Mujahideen warlords engaged in a prolonged civil war, paving the way for the rise of the Taliban. If factional, tribal, and ideological rifts widen, this blood-soaked history might be repeated. Blood-soaked history is a metaphor evoking the violent past that led to the Taliban's emergence. This warns that similar internal fractures could lead to a repeat of the chaos seen after Najibullah's fall. The Taliban are by no means an ideal dispensation. However, if the system collapsed without a viable alternative, Afghanistan would return to the violence of yore, adding to the miseries of millions of ordinary Afghans. This contrasts the current regime's flaws with the potential consequences of its collapse, suggesting that while the Taliban are problematic, their fall without a substitute could plunge the country back into widespread violence. Moreover, terrorist groups such as ISK and the TTP would take advantage of the chaos. This points out that instability would provide fertile ground for extremist groups like ISK and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan to expand their activities. From Pakistan's perspective, the TTP's activities are of particular concern because of the long terrorist campaign it has waged against this country. This sentence highlights that Pakistan views the TTP as a serious security threat due to its ongoing terrorist actions against the nation. The only workable solution lies in Mullah Akhundzada loosening his iron grip on the country. Loosening his iron grip is a metaphor suggesting that the leader must reduce his authoritarian control to allow for internal reconciliation. States cannot be run on ideology alone, and if Afghanistan remains internationally isolated and economically weak, internal discontent will grow. This argues that a country must balance ideology with pragmatic governance. Continued isolation and weakness are likely to exacerbate internal dissent. While the Taliban cannot be expected to respect democratic values, Voices of dissent must be heard and more flexibility shown, particularly with regard to basic freedoms and women's rights. This asserts that even though the Taliban are unlikely to adopt democracy, they should at least allow for some dissent and be more lenient on fundamental human rights. Ideally, a democratic system that promises rights to all of the country's ethnic, tribal, and religious groups should be the goal. This states an ideal vision for Afghanistan, a democratic system that accommodates its diverse population. But until that goal is achieved, the Taliban leadership should listen to voices of reason and shed their rigidity. Shed their rigidity means to become more flexible and open to change. This is a call for reform within the Taliban leadership. The last time their regime fell because they failed to sever links with al-Qaeda. This alludes to historical events where the Taliban's refusal to break ties with extremist groups contributed to their downfall, serving as a cautionary reminder. This time, if the Taliban high command fails to listen to its own cadres and leaders, the collapse could come from within. This warns that internal dissent, if not addressed, could lead to a self-inflicted collapse of the regime. Published in Dawn, February 23, 2025.